I've completed Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown thanks to an early review code from Ubisoft. So I'm going to break down everything you need to know about this game before you buy it so you can decide if it's worth your time, attention, and hard-earned cash. No storyline spoilers here, and thanks to Ubi for sponsoring this video so I could get all of this info out to you very swiftly so you can make an informed decision. And let's first go through some general overview info about the game so we're all on the same page. Firstly, it will be releasing on January the 18th, with the game itself being a action-adventure platformer game with a Metroidvania structure that is based in the mythological Persian world. But what does that actually mean? Well, if you played Star Wars Jedi Survivor last year, you will have a solid understanding on how this game is built, because a Metroidvania gaming design means that you'll have to travel back and forth throughout the map to progress the game, as there isn't a single linear path to 100% completing the game, which takes approximately 20 to 25 hours, by the way. In fact, as you progress through the story and unlock different powers, you'll then be able to return to certain areas that you couldn't enter at the start of your playthrough because you didn't have that specific ability unlocked, such as using the teleport jumping move to cross a previously uncrossable distance, just an example here. Now, the game is also built in 2D, with its art style being inspired by shonen anime, as confirmed by the cinematic director Joseph Antoine Clavet. And what I would say is the over-the-top kill animations in this game are super enjoyable to experience, even if you're not massively into anime, which I'm guilty of not being, by the way. Now, as for its platform release, it's launching on the Switch, the PS4 and PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and the Xbox One. It will also be coming to PC via the Ubisoft Store and the Epic Game Store, and you can also, I believe, grab it on Amazon Luna if you are on that platform. Now, honorable mention here though, if you are a Ubisoft Plus subscriber, you will be able to get this game for free at launch, but you'll also grab it 3 days before the official release date, so you'll be able to play on the 15th of January. Now, as for console and PC specs, I will pop all of the official breakdowns on your screen right now, just in case you want to take a screenshot and have a perusal for yourself. But just know that the game runs at 60 FPS on every platform, with the PS5 and the Xbox Series X pulling in 120 frames per second at 4K, which you'd also, to be fair, kind of expect from this game. Now, game size will be between 20 and 30 gigabytes, depending upon your console and platform. And the game has also officially gone gold, by the way, which means that it has been signed off by industry testers, so it's in solid condition. And to be fair to Ubisoft, I didn't actually come across a single bug during my playthrough, so I can personally attest to its good condition, and I don't say that lightly. Trust me. Now, there's a different couple game editions here and exclusive content that you need to be aware of, which I'm going to break down very simply for you now. Firstly, we have the standard edition of the game, which is just the base game with no extras, that at the time of recording is £44, $49 and €49 for my European and American friends. Secondly, we have the deluxe edition, which comes with the base game and 3 days early access as well, meaning you will be able to play on January the 15th with the Ubisoft Plus subscribers, as well as pick up the Immortals cosmetic outfit for Sargon, which will be familiar to you if you played Ubisoft's Immortals game. You'll also get a Prosperity Bird amulet, which when equipped will reveal hidden treasures on the map, and a digital adventure guide, which will provide you with a full look at the in-game map, as well as other useful tips and tricks and strategies regarding specific boss fights. Now, if you do pre-order the standard or deluxe edition of the game, you will pick up this warrior with in-outfit as a bonus, but just know Ubisoft like to release these pre-order outfits for their games around 2 months after the release of the game on Ubisoft Connect for Ubisoft coins. So just bear that in mind, and I've actually popped a link down below in the comments if you want to check all of this out for yourself. There's also no collector's edition or season pass or DLC expansions planned for this game at the moment, but I wouldn't be surprised if we do see a future content update if this game performs well, just like we saw Ubi do with Assassin's Creed Valhalla and the Dawn of Ragnarok expansion a year and a half after launch. But what is this game's story and premise all about? Well, it's important for you to know that you don't need to have watched the Prince of Persia film or played any of the Prince of Persia titles to understand what's actually going on in this game from a lore perspective, as confirmed by the cinematic director Joseph Antoine Clavet, who stated that there is no narrative connection with previous games. And that's because The Lost Crown here is the first game in the series where we don't play as the prince himself. In fact, we play as this dude called Sargon, who is one of the 7 legendary Persian warriors that is part of a group called Immortals, kind of like Prince of Persia's Avengers, basically. Now, Sargon is the youngest of these Avengers, or Immortals, who is gifted with extraordinary agility and is a master in dual sword combat that is satisfying to use in game, if I'm being honest, but more on combat very shortly, because as you progress through the narrative, you will unlock supernatural abilities and time powers whilst exploring Mount Karth, where the Immortals team are trying to save Prince Ghassan, who was kidnapped at the start of the game. Now, the story incorporates a lot of aspects of Arab mythology and folklore, which shows how the Arab and Persian empires and their respective cultures permeated and diffused into one another, such as the implementation of Arabic words into Persian and vice versa. And if you want to experience this firsthand for maximum immersion and learn something new about these cultures and history, you can play the game in the Farsi language, similar to what Ghost of Tsushima did with their Japanese dub, which I was a huge fan of, and it's cool to experience this here in this game as well. Now, if you are enjoying this breakdown so far, please do leave a very swift like down below, and if you do end up giving this game a go, please consider using the AndyReloads creator code next time you're in the Ubisoft store, as it's the best way to support me. So thanks very much for that support. I really appreciate it, and I've popped that link in the pinned comments. Now, let's move on to exploration and discuss some of the important things you should know about it before you do dive in, because as someone who is a bit of a filthy casual when it comes to platforming games, I was hesitant when giving this game a go, as I know that getting lost in a 2D labyrinth has frustrated me in previous games in the past. But between you and I was genuinely pleasantly surprised, and there was two reasons for that. The first is that the developers have implemented two game modes before you start the Lost Crown. We have the exploration mode that gives you hardcore players minimal map information, which means you're pretty much autonomous when it comes to discovering the world, and is recommended for you Metroidvania pros who want to figure everything out for yourselves. But for players like myself who don't want to spend 4 hours trying to figure out how to get out of a room, we have the guided mode option here, which displays all the map icons and, most importantly, the location of the next objective and specific areas that are blocked off until you unlock the correct power, as well as all of the pathways and routes you've already explored being shown and highlighted on your map. Now, having tried both modes, the guided mode allowed me to enjoy the game a lot more, and that's not because I wanted to be handheld from point A to point B constantly or told where to go, but rather I had the option to look at the map when I hit a bit of a dead end, which got me out of that pinch quite quickly, so I continued enjoying my playthrough just purely because of that. Now, the second reason why I like playing this particular platformer in the environment that it's based in was the option of fast travel around the world at the fast travel altars, as well as the failsafe mechanic of these whack-whack trees, as they act as kind of checkpoints in this game, where whenever you're killed in a fight or fall into a trap, you will then respawn at the nearest tree here, so you can kind of get back to business pretty quickly instead of then running back through the whole map for 10 or 15 minutes just to get to the place where you initially died. Now, additionally to all of this, you can also change up your abilities, Athra surges and amulets, which I'm going to walk you through shortly, don't worry. But the benefit to this being that if you die against one of the 9 main boss encounters in the game, or alternatively against the 65 unique mini bosses with different abilities, you can switch up your loadout to improve your strategy against them, meaning you're not locked in and you can easily adapt pending your performance, which is a good development design in my opinion with these whack-whack trees. There's also 9 optional side quests in this game, which breaks up the 20-hour main story, and 13 different environmental biomes to run through and explore, which I very much liked, as it kept the game feeling pretty fresh in this fairly short narrative compared to other Ubisoft games. Now, when it comes to movement in this game, it's pretty fun when you get the hang of it, and takes me back to my old school Sonic gaming days on the Sega Mega Drive, if I'm being honest. But instead of rolling around the map, Sargon can jump off about just any wall in this game, provided it's not hooked up with any spikes. And when you do get a good parkour flow going, it can be pretty satisfying dodging closely around obstacles and swinging on the flagpoles to get where you need to go. That said, if you're a bit apprehensive about the quick nature of gameplay here, especially when you unlock the air dash power, that does add an extra further aspect of horizontal and vertical gameplay to keep in mind, then you can enable this platform assist option in the options menu, which will allow you to warp through a portal directly, which means that you can kind of just progress through the game without rage quitting due to dying a dozen times over in a certain puzzle. Speaking of which, this game is chock-a-blocked, as we say here in the UK, which means it's filled with environments environmental puzzles that will initially get you scratching your head on how to complete them, and that's because of this Metroidvania mechanic and needing to have unlocked several of Sargon's abilities to be able to progress through the story, with the game not doing a fantastic job of explaining that early on. So just know that when you see out of reach elements like this hanging fruit, for example, you'll want to use your bow to fire at it to then subsequently unlock a new traversal ledge, or you can utilize your chakram by turning it into a spinning weapon of sorts that bounces off walls and will subsequently allow you to unlock doors or move up and down on new platforms. So if you do come across these things early on in the game, just ignore them until you've unlocked your bow and chakra, which will take you a couple hours. Now, there's a cool mechanic here that's called memory shards that allows you to place a screenshot marker on your map when you do come across a block path or area, just like we just spoke about essentially, which will allow you to return to that point when you've unlocked the appropriate ability for Sargon, which I wish I had utilized earlier on in my playthrough. Now, when it comes to combat, you could spend the whole game hacking and slashing your way through all the enemies, but there's several things to be aware of that I found to be more enjoyable. Firstly, Sargon has dual swords that we spoke about earlier, and these cannot be changed. These are the only weapons that you get in the game. In fact, you get them or you unlock them at the start of the game, and by button bashing specific buttons, you'll be able to trigger acrobatic combos noted in the menus, by the way. And you can also perform a heavy attack by holding down the attack button for a little longer for more damage. But on top of that, Sargon also gets a bow that we also just briefly spoke about, but it's important for you to know that your quiver capacity that contains your arrows is limited. This can be upgraded, of course, during the game, and you'll need to loot arrows around the world to be able to use your bow. You can't just go mental with offensive range combat too frequently early on in this game because it is quite overpowered. Additionally, you can use this chakram to inflict range damage, but I found this to be a bit more of a solid environmental puzzle option more than anything else, but it's good to know that you can use it if you're low on arrows and health and want to do some damage at range. Speaking of defensive options though, a lot of boss fights in this game are genuinely very challenging, which is very welcome. In fact, you're going to need to dodge certain attacks with a well-timed slide through their feet or by dash jumping backwards. You can also parry every single attack in the game, with the exception being these unstoppable attacks that are visible or they notify you with a red incoming light on the enemy's head, as you can see here. So that's the perfect time to dodge or jump backwards. And speaking of color-coded attacks, it took me way too long to realize this, but the yellow prompts on enemies are called reckless attacks, which means if you parry at the right time, you perform an awesome counterattack anime animation, which genuinely didn't get boring. But if you're thinking you may have a bit of a hard time with combat in this game, then you can change the difficulty at any time in the menus, including full customization of the difficulty level where you can alter the health bars, damage dealt, environmental damage, and the dodge timer window, just to name a few, which allows you to ease yourself into this style of game if you haven't played it before, increasing the difficulty as you acclimatize to it and become familiar with the game as a whole. Or you can just burn through the entire game on easy. The choice is yours, which is good in my opinion. Now, another combat mechanic which will be available to you in the game are these Athra surges, which are pretty much ultimate one-shot power moves that you can use in a fight or utilize against a big boss to get the upper hand. The caveat being that they will only become available for you to activate once you fill up your Athra bar here on your UI, if I just zoom in for you, which you can also do by successfully defeating enemies and building up your combo streak without being hit. Incidentally, these Athra charges can also be used defensively, such as utilizing the Barman's Breath, which allows you to create a kind of healing zone, which when you then stand in it, you probably guessed it, you will regenerate your health, and that's very useful in high damage boss battles. That said, it's good to know that you can equip 2 of these main abilities at one time during your playthrough. So you could build a loadout with 1 defensive and 1 offensive ability, which I found the most impactful way to play during my time with the game, but it may be different with you. You may want to just go completely offensive, and that's also totally fine. Now, in total, there's 10 of these Athra abilities that you can get your hands on, which you can switch out at those checkpoint whack trees to find out which ones you prefer. On top of that, you'll also be able to unlock 6 different time powers for Sargon after collecting a feather of the Simmer. Now, these powers are unlocked sequentially, so in order, and when you get hold of them, you'll be able to use them in and out of combat. Now, I'm not going to break down each one here because I kind of consider them a little bit spoilery, as they're a big highlight for me in this game, but just know that they are great fun to use, and the game really does come alive when you do unlock them, in my opinion. Now, another gameplay mechanic that you need to be aware of are these amulets, which grant you with passive bonuses that alter Sargon and by extension your own gameplay playstyle. There's a total of 38 of them in the game for you to collect, where you can actually only equip 12 simultaneously by the end of the game. Now, to give you an example of what they do, the Blade Dancer amulet will allow you to land an additional attack at the end of a combo, which can then be upgraded back at the blacksmith in the Haven for additional auto attacks. So you can kind of go up to 2 or 3, and more on the Haven and what that is in just a moment, because these amulets are not only found throughout the world in chests or rewards for completing those 9 available side quests, but you can also purchase them from different vendors in the game, and they are genuinely worth spending some of your attention on as you play through, as they can really pay dividends throughout the game and also allow you a little bit of extra customization depending upon your own gameplay style, which is a wonderful segue onto customization now, because it's one of the things in the game that I would have loved to have seen a little bit more development time on, as it's pretty basic, because the only thing that you can change with Sargon is his visual cosmetic armor by pressing the triangle whilst in the character menu if you're on consoles. And in this case, as you can see here, that's the Immortals Deluxe Edition skin he's now wearing. Now, you can unlock more outfits for Sargon in chests throughout the map, which don't provide any gameplay impact, by the way, so there's no stats on them. But what this means as a whole is that you can't change the look of your swords, bow, hairstyles, or anything else that we've come accustomed to in Ubisoft games, and I'd love to see more customization options added here in the future if Ubisoft Monteplier gets the green light for an expansion or DLC sequel. Now, what is this Haven that I've just been mentioning? Well, I like to think of it as your home base as soon as you get to Mount Carth, where you'll be able to interact with vendors and quest givers. Now, important to note, first of all, is Artaban, the Swordmaster at the Haven, and he will provide you with a free training mode where you can train your abilities against random NPCs without the risk of dying. He'll also set you challenges which will reward you with time crystals and allow you to learn to perform high impactful combos. Now, Faraba is also worth dropping in and speaking to regularly every time you go through the Haven, as she provides you with hints on the main quest that you're currently on if you do get stuck, and also sells you piece of the world map, and I'll run you through Currencies in just a moment, because another notable NPC is Kahiva, the blacksmith, who I also briefly mentioned earlier, as she will allow you to buy new amulets as well as upgrade your weapons. And finally, the mage, who sells you health potions as well as amulets and amulet slots so you can equip more of them, as well as allowing you to upgrade the impact of your healing potions. So worth coming back here and chatting to all of these NPCs throughout your playthrough. Now, it wouldn't be a Ubisoft game without a lot of different in-game currencies, and I'm not talking about MTX or microtransaction stuff here, because as you progress through the narrative, you're going to come across 3 collectible resources that are used as a currency to then purchase in-game items. The first are the Azure Damascus ores, the second are the Xerxes old coins, and both of which you spend at the mage and blacksmith to purchase more advanced upgrades. And the third currency here are time crystals, which drop frequently from enemies, which are the main currency for purchasing anything and everything in this game. Now, as for resources, you have your health potions, your memory shards that we've spoken about, and Soma tree petals and flowers, which can all be bought from vendors as well as found throughout the world, with the Soma tree petals increasing your overall health if you do collect 4 of them. Now, what about secrets in this game? Well, apart from the main storyline, standard loot chests and side quests, there are a cool few things for you to know. The first are the hidden mystery chests that require specific actions in certain areas of the game to then trigger the appearance or apparition of that mystery chest. You can often tell you're near one by locating the black altars on the ground, so keep an eye out for them and figure out what you need to do. There's also a lot of hidden destroyable walls, just like in Sonic and even in Elden Ring most recently, actually, and I am 100% confident I haven't found anywhere near all of them, but there are some decent rewards if you do manage to find any of them. There's also these sand vials scattered throughout Mount Carth, which will give you more info on the ancient sands of time prophecy if you're interested in the general story or lore. And speaking of which, there's 57 specific lore items that you'll come across in the game on top of these sand vials, which sets the scene a little bit more about the time period this game is set in and past inhabitants of the Persian Empire in Mount Carth, which I enjoyed learning about when I came across them. Now, with all that said and done, if this game sounds like something that you fancy giving a go, please do consider using that AndyReloads credit code option next time you're in the Ubisoft store. It helps support me directly, as these videos, they do take a long time to make. So genuinely, thanks very much. Link to get the game is in the pinned comments down below. Also, check out this new Prince of Persia video on your screen right now. It should be on my face right now, which will be full of tips and tricks before you play. And if it's not published, it will be very soon. So do subscribe if you haven't already, so you can find your way back here easily. Big thanks again to Ubisoft for the early access code, and Nika for helping me make this video. Coffee's definitely on her, and hopefully I'll see you in that next video in just a moment.